Did something happen? Did we move?
Welcome to Ben and Barry on Football. We're just having a little too much fun here, getting prepped for this show. Let's introduce ourselves. My name is Barry Sterling Mitchell, and I produce the Sterling Net Point Power Rankings. And my compadre in crime here is...
I'm Ben Dickerson, lover of everything football, especially the NFL, and fantasy geek.
Yes. The background for this show basically is Ben and I have known each other for plus 40 years?
Something like that, yeah.
Plus 40 years, and we've pretty much been arguing about football the entire time. So we decided to put it on camera. Hey, why not? You know, he actually comes up with a good point or two every once in a while. Every once in a while, he actually does. But his thing is, tell him what your thing is, man. What's your thing?
What's my thing?
Yeah. What, like football? What are you right now? What are you doing in football?
Right now, my thing is fantasy football because I'm playing for financial gain. I love fantasy sports in general. I really love fantasy football. I am in 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I'm in 5 or 6 money leagues and about 20 other online leagues with people I have no clue who they are. I also play fantasy baseball. I also play fantasy basketball, which I love and win at all the time. And I even play fantasy hockey every once in a while. And I've won at that also. I coach in the PTTFL. Got a shirt on here.
Philadelphia.
Yeah. So shout out
to football.
Everybody in the PTTFL. I'm the coach of the Seminoles flag football team. And we are going into game 5, I believe, of the fall season. And the league is up and running and alive and well.
Man, that's a lot of football going on in your life.
Yes,
and I produce the Sterling Net Point Power Rankings. We're going to take a couple minutes, and I'm going to explain what that is because it really is the foundation for a lot of our conversation as we move forward. So I'm going to take a moment here and share some information with you. Where the heck is it? Is that it? I do believe. Yes. So what I want to do here is talk about the Sterling Net Point Power Rankings, what it is very quickly, and why we think it's important. So the Sterling Net Point Power Rankings are basically our ranking the teams based on net points. That would be points for minus points against. And so when you bring those things together, you actually rank them for how well they played that first week, as opposed to an opinion about what we think about who's the best team and the number one team. That's for other people to do. But what we do is actually look at the numbers, the results. So in this particular graph, you will notice that in first place, we have the Baltimore Ravens. So Baltimore right here, they're plus 40 points in terms of the net points that they beat their opponent by. Who was their opponent last week? Last week. So this is the results from week 1, and they beat the slop out of them. Was that Buffalo?
Yeah,
that was Buffalo.
The great thing is about the power rankings, it takes a complete picture of the team's performance. Not only the amount of points that they scored, but the amount of points that were scored against them. And that we feel gives a clearer picture of the team's performance, regardless of who they play.
In my other life, I do some financial planning, and someone's net worth is everything that they own minus what they owe. And the bottom line is you can have a positive net worth, you can have a negative net worth. And we discovered through the Sterling Net Point Power Rankings that many of our teams operate in the negative. The big negative last week was, and I can't see that right there, Buffalo. So there you go with Buffalo, and on the opposite end of that, you have the Baltimore Ravens. So half of the league at some particular point is generally in the negative. Very interestingly, we had 2 teams that were not in the negative and were not in the positive, and that was your Pittsburgh Steelers and your Cleveland Browns, which both tied, so their net points was at 0. So they're the separating points between those teams that lost, those teams that won, and this will change as the season goes on,
week by week.
and you can really see the changes in momentum for teams and things of that nature.
Absolutely.
I think one great example last season was Kansas City.
Right.
I mean, they started out so hot, you know what I mean, and they were just blowing people away, sort of like they did in the first game. This year just is what it is, right? But then they went through a lull last year.
Yes.
And their whole net point rankings began to fall. And we could see them begin to struggle. Right. And they pulled out of it a little bit near the end. But whatever their problems were that was affecting the team, they never completely overcame them. Consequently, they didn't make it to the Super Bowl.
And although I don't remember exactly how it went with them last year, besides what you just said, you can actually check and track through the power rankings deficiencies.
Absolutely.
Okay? At week by week.
Absolutely.
You know, we can see where the trends are and tell, not just by the eye test, to actually watching the game and say, well, they didn't play well on offense, or they didn't play well on defense. You can actually track it with the net point power rankings and put your finger practically right on what the good thing is and what the bad thing is.
That happened with the Falcons. We saw the
Absolutely.
Falcons.
We saw their defense climb week by week by week. Most people were watching the games going, oh, the Falcons are really turning on. They're getting hot. You know what I mean? They're winning. We knew why. Because of the net point power rankings.
Because of the net point ranking. So this is something that we're going to use as a basis for our discussion. Now, by visiting the net point power rankings on Facebook, and that's where I basically publish at this particular point, you'll be able to see this graph, and you'll be able to see the other posts that I make when we separate out the rankings on each area of points scored or points for and points against. And then the next, what we feel is most important statistic, which is the turnover margin. And we'll go through this report, and we're going to introduce a term called the bias. And the bias is basically when you take two teams who have certain net points and they're going to play each other. Well, the bias will go to the team with the most net points. So if one team has 5 net points and the other team has 1 net point, that difference 4 is the bias that goes with the team who had the greatest net points. And we find that this actually does a pretty good job of tracking what's happening. And although I don't call it predictive, I call it a measure of dominance. And if I have a dominant team, how dominant that team is, how dominantly they have played, which is more important, because the team is one thing, but how have they played when it came time to put it on the field, it shows up there. And we're going to add in a new feature this year, which is going to be called the Bias Plus. And what we're going to do with the Bias Plus is we're going to basically combine our net point bias and our turnover margin bias to produce the Bias Plus as we discuss the oncoming matchups. So that's how the Sterling net point power rankings work. Ben, let's just look at our rankings here. And we're going to talk about basically the top 5 in the different areas that make up the net points and the turnover margin. So you want to go 5 and up?
We can go 5 and up.
5 and up. So let's start off with net points, as we have number 5 coming in with the Cincinnati Bengals with 11 net points. Number 4, the Washington Redskins. Who was talking about them at all, right? In the preseason, right?
How about that?
With 18 net points. The Los Angeles Rams with 20 net points. And the New York Jets.
Surprise, surprise.
Jets. Jets with 31. And I don't know if I called them my sleeper or not. I know I talked about Seattle as a sleeper. But we really were confused about what the number 1 team was doing offensively because of the quarterbacks they were bringing in and how different they were from the quarterback that they had. And we were like,
and that's another discussion unto itself, as far as how teams draft and how they set up their schemes and finding position players to play within certain systems. but it did bring a level of confusion and maybe skepticism as far as where Baltimore was going to be this year.
In my mind, at least.
And then Joe Flacco woke up.
And then Joe Flacco woke up, and the Baltimore Ravens matched up against the Buffalo Bills, and they put up a net point total of 44 points. So that's a pretty big beatdown right there, and it put them in the first place for net points. And now all of a sudden, the Ravens are in the immediate football discussions.
Mm-hmm.
In our next category, which now we're going to talk about points for. This is the points that these teams actually put up. And starting with fifth place, let's go over here. We have a team that has everybody a buzz right now. They have a second-year quarterback, but really first-year starter, and one of the more imaginative head coaches in the league, especially when he has an extra week. And in this case, he had an extra off-season to come up with stuff. We have the Kansas City Chiefs coming in. They put up 38 points in week one. The New Orleans Saints, a perennial scoring team.
Always big-time scores.
Always big-time scores, came in at number 4. The Baltimore Ravens put up 47.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And that's what got them in the first place for the total net points. However, the Jets and the Buccaneers tied at 48 points apiece. But we gave the Buccaneers the first place and the Jets second place. I don't know why, but that's how it worked out. In any event, that's some serious point scoring. And again, we can reference this to other teams that you might think, okay, they're strong teams. So you can reference this to the Patriots, who only put up 27 points. You can reference this to your Super Bowl champion, Philadelphia Eagles, who put up 18 points.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of media that I'm seeing, they have, when they're doing their power rankings, Eagles are number 1. And they're carrying that over as a Super Bowl team, as a team with great lines and all of that. And they look at the team that way. But
yeah,
the bottom line is we're talking Eagles.
That's the difference between them and us.
Right. They came up.
They have
12.
so much criteria. It almost gets confusing what they did last year, where they finished last year. They were high scoring last year. They weren't. The matchup, how we see it, da-da-da-da. We're going by the power rankings. So our power rankings are based specifically on what the teams actually did.
And the Eagles are 12th in our power rankings with 6 net points. So they didn't spank the Falcons, okay, but they did get by for sure. So there you have our points for rankings, top from 5th on up. We started with Kansas City Chiefs, the New Orleans Saints, the Baltimore Ravens, the New York Jets, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, you go to points against. We have this total picture here in terms of points. Number 5, the LA Rams.
Mm-hmm.
Not a bad start for the Rams. They were a little slow getting out. And let me mention 2 names for the Raiders that they had to deal with, and I might have surprised them a little bit. One is Beast Mode. Beast Mode came out smoking. I don't know if Beast Mode has a whole game in him.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to be able to sustain that.
But he came
over
out
a whole
smoking.
game, let alone a whole season. But,
And who's the tight end for the Raiders?
Jared Cook.
Monster guy.
Kind of an afterthought in the fantasy world, and we'll talk about some fantasy later, but had a really good game, good connection with Carr.
Number 4, you do have your Philadelphia Eagles there. Only gave up 12 points. And that's respectable as any defense is concerned. Number 3, Carolina Panthers only gave up 8 points. The Washington Redskins, again, sort of an afterthought in the discussion about teams and their chase to the Super Bowl, only gave up 6 points, and that was good enough for second place. And the Baltimore Ravens came in at number 1 with 3 points given up. So these are your teams that are some of your top teams, your top 5 teams in terms of having actually given up points. Anything you want to say on that category there?
Just that, in re-emphasizing the power rankings, it's obvious to see how the Baltimore Ravens are ranked number 1 when they were number 3 in offense, number 1 in defense.
That's how you get the number 1.
That's how they get the number 1
all year long.
As opposed to the Buccaneers, who scored a whopping 48 points, but I have to look for them to find them on the points against side.
They are 29th in points against, having given up 40 points.
Exactly. But that great 48 points was enough to hold them up. That they're actually, and I know we only did the top 5, but they're actually ranked number 7 overall.
Number 7 overall.
Thanks to that whopping 48 poins that they scored. But that defense can drag you down.
That was the Saints that gave up that whopping 48 points, which puts the Saints in 30th place, tied with the Detroit Lions for 32nd place in terms of points against. That's right. So, these teams have some things that they have to do. Turnover margins, okay? I've been talking about those Cleveland Browns.
You have.
And again, the idea or the point came to me from a media person, and I don't remember who that was, but they suggested that the Cleveland Browns were the next iteration of the Jacksonville Jaguars in terms of being a team that lost and lost and lost and collected first rounders after first rounder after first rounder. And now they got talent throughout that organization. Right. And the only question is, now can they bring it together? Can the coaching, and bring it together, and can they learn how to win? And they gave the Steelers all they could handle.
Yeah, they did.
That rush is no joke because that defense especially has a lot of talent on it. And, either one of those teams makes their field goal and everybody's talking about, a winner here as opposed to a tie. But when you tie with the Pittsburgh Steelers on opening day, you can't feel but so bad about yourself.
Especially if you're the Cleveland Browns.
And we can't even say that the Browns got by because Le'Veon was there because their running back did a bang-up job. So
there's no excuses.
No excuses.
The Browns are better. I'm not saying they're going to the Super Bowl, but the Browns are better.
The Browns are better. So they came in number 1 turnover ratio, number 2, and tied. Actually, the next 1, 2, 3, 4. So through 5, everybody's tied with +3 in the turnover margin. That would be the Jets, Minnesota, Miami, and the Rams. So these are teams that, in addition to having some strong net point, and you'll see there's a correlation always between turnovers and scoring. You had a lot of pick sixes this past weekend.
Yeah, well, there's a little uneven quarterback play.
You throw that thing out the flat or whatever if you want to.
There's been a lot of uneven quarterback play, but it's early.
It's early. Yeah.
And a lot of teams are experimenting and throwing rookies out there and throwing some journeymen out there.
And got rookie coaches and
there's all kinds of stuff going on. But
right there.
But one thing I like to say about the turnovers is if the top 5 is the Browns, the Rams, the Dolphins, the Vikings, and the Jets, of all those teams, I would venture to guess that only the Rams and the Vikings were preseason favorites to have good to great defenses. In fact, I would say they both were supposedly considered great defensive teams. They did their thing. Where did the Jets come from? That was quite a performance they put on, man.
That was quite a performance that the Jets put on. There's no doubt about it. The Jets defensively came in at 9th. I'm sorry, at 9th? No.
11.
Mm-hmm. Defensively? No, I'm talking about defensively. 9th. They gave up 17 points.
This number over here, it works all over the place.
Anywho, the Jets weren't bad defensively, and that offensive. But you know, also,
Yeah.
Was it the Jets or who played the Lions?
No.
One of those teams kept throwing to practically the 0-0 of the game. I mean, they kept, and I think it was the Jets.
A winning team?
The Jets.
It was the Jets.
It was the Jets.
Yeah.
As the clock was counting down from under 1 minute, they were still putting up.
Yeah.
They were still passing and still going for it, like trying to score. The coach didn't seem to mind when they shook hands at the end of the game. Like one coach didn't say, "You running the game," you know, like some coaches.
Well, that's because everybody likes the Jets coach. He's a nice guy. Todd Bowles is like the most even-tempered, mild-mannered.
Were you surprised that they kept pushing that score like
that? There's several reasons why I think they did. Number one, it was working. Number two, that's what they were giving him. Number three, they're trying to save the coach's job. I mean, I can go on and on. But if you're a team, especially if you're coming off a losing season, or let alone a couple of losing seasons, and your coach is on the hot seat, people aren't looking at you. You're like second-class citizens in your own city. Well, maybe first and a half class citizens because the Giants ain't really running away with nothing. But that's another story. They have a lot of reasons. They have a lot of reasons to try to do what they're doing, man. I mean, plus, and maybe the biggest thing I almost forgot, the number one pick, Sam Darnold, rookie quarterback. Boy's hot. Let him roll. Let him roll. People want to see him. People want to see him. The Jets want to see him. Their season rides on this guy's arm.
Then the balancing part of that is you're going to leave him out there to potentially get hurt.
For what? They couldn't even breathe on him.
Well, it only takes one fluke move. Bottom line is, if he just needed extra reps, okay.
You can't play scared. Green Bay should have never put Aaron Rodgers back in. They'd have lost the game.
You just say can't play scared, and then you say you should not have put Rodgers in. That would be playing scared.
That's what I'm saying. You're saying.
No, I'm just saying that common sense basically is when you get a team down to a certain point and you know that the win is in place.
Doesn't common sense also say the star of the freaking league goes out with what looks like a serious injury is carted off?
Different situation. One team is winning by a big margin. There's no need to leave your first string. And as a matter of fact, this gives you a chance to put your second string and give them some reps. That's standard football operation.
You're serious, right?
Don't you think that's standard football operation?
There is no standard. No. It's standard team operation. Every team is different. Every coach is different. Every scenario is different. Every team situation.
Well, the scenario is definitely different in Green Bay. They were losing,
and they did not want to lose that game.
Did you notice? It was that when Aaron went out and what's his name? Kaiser came in. At first, Kaiser looked like he was going to be okay, but it was like Max
he used to play for the Browns.
Wait a minute, but it's like
he's Browns trash.
Max smelled blood, or he smelled rookie quarterback, or he smelled something because Mac was giving him.
And then Mac Cleveland Brown trash. That's what they say.
Did Mac play the second half? Because Aaron Rodgers was getting passes off. But you're going to move them all the way down, but their line all of a sudden started collapsing, and I think he was just taking too long to make his passing decision. And Khalil Mack was just like on him, man. He was
one-man wrecking crew, baby.
With the interception, the touchdown, the whole bit, it was like. But then Aaron came out. Not mobile or whatever, and he was getting that pass off.
Right.
That leads to a rant. In any event, Khalil Mack had a bit of a day. There. So we have our turnover margins. We talked about that. Let's look at the upcoming week matchups, and we're going to talk about the matchups, and we're going to sort of mention what we consider our most intriguing games based on the net point bias and the new bias plus. We'll talk about the games relative to those particular measurables. So you want to start at the top, just kind of quickly go down, right?
Yeah, sure, why not? Because we can go quick until we get to our intriguing matchups.
Yeah, man. All of these games are great, though. I'm just so
That's
happy.
true.
I'm just so happy football season.
Well, there's a reason to watch each game, even if it's just for one team in particular or a player or two. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And again, this is a great thing. I'm numbers guy, I'm team guy, but this guy knows the players. As a fantasy guy, they choose their defenses, right?
Yeah.
And then you put your offensive squad together player by player.
Right.
So he's much better with players than I am. Again, I'm a Madden guy. I'll talk about that, in a minute. But let's go through the schedule here. All right. So we're starting out with Baltimore and Cincinnati. The Baltimore-Cincinnati matchup provides a bias of 33 points in Baltimore's favor. Baltimore also has a turnover bias of +1, and that gives them a bias plus of 34 points in the favor of Baltimore.
Oh, we got our bias plus cooking. Okay,
that's cool. Our bias plus cooking in that summary sheet.
Right.
I like the way you did that. So in any event, as we look at this game, okay, Baltimore is coming in with a net point ranking of 1. Cincinnati's coming in with a net point ranking of 5. Baltimore has 44 net points to 11 on Cincinnati. And in terms of turnovers, turnover margin was 0 for Cincinnati, and it was 1. So this looks like a Baltimore game. What do you think about that?
Well, a +34 is pretty strong, so I can't go against that. Yeah, I'd say that's Baltimore's game.
Okay. The next game we have is Atlanta and Carolina. Carolina has a net point bias of 14 points. Atlanta has the turnover bias for 1 point in their favor. So the bias plus is going to go to Carolina with a 13-point bias plus rate ranking.
That's a little tougher. I mean, I'm thinking on the top of my head, +5. I'm sorry, a +13 is somewhat significant. But Atlanta they're like a little Jekyll and Hyde. Jekyll and Hyde. I actually did that. Is that a Freudian?
There's a word for that. It ain't Freudian though.
No, okay. Well, anyway, I actually like Atlanta in that game.
You actually like Atlanta in that game?
Yeah, but that's just me. The bias is a +13 in Carolina's favor. If I had to bet money, I'd probably go with Carolina.
Yeah, I would probably go Carolina too. There's something about Atlanta that's doesn't settle.
Atlanta is home now. Not that makes a whole lot of difference
at this time of year.
Like I said, they're
it's warm everywhere.
Right. Yeah. So yeah. Okay.
It's not like cold, whatever. Chargers and Buffalo. Chargers have a 34 net point bias in their favor. We'll give the turnover bias to Buffalo, which puts them up at 33 points. I don't think the Chargers better get their act together.
Here's the funny thing about this one.
Put on Buffalo. Come on.
Here's the funny thing about this one. The Chargers have a +33-point bias. So you should say, okay, Chargers. Then you go, wait, it's Chargers Buffalo. And you go, okay, Chargers. Right? But then you look at the turnover ratio. Who's got the turnovers and who doesn't? I really thought the Chargers defense was going to be way better this year. Did they just play poorly? I'm not exactly sure how to take it. I'm going to go with the bias. But I'll tell you this, there's one more factor. West Coast team coming to the East Coast. I don't know what time the game is, though.
Yeah, you always talk about that.
It's a West Coast team coming to the East Coast, and it's a 1 o'clock game. Could be trouble.
The Chargers came in at 28th on defense. They gave up 38 points.
Gave up 38 points. They had no turnovers that I can remember.
And they were actually turnover margin -2.
There you go.
So not quite sure. Again, everybody wants the Chargers to be the next Super Bowl contestant.
And they could be.
And they talk about that. But somehow, again, something's not mixing right in the pot.
First game.
Okay,
I'm going to chalk that up to first game.
And I remember part of the discussion about them is that they start slow.
True.
The problem with that is that statistically, teams that lose their first game, their statistics for going to the Super Bowl go down.
They do go down.
They go down. So, Green Bay, Minnesota. Now, Green Bay, Minnesota is one of what I think is going to be a very interesting game. Minnesota has a net point bias of 7 points. They have a turnover bias of 5 points, and that would give them a bias plus of 12 points in Minnesota's favor going into this game. And we don't know just what's going on with Aaron, because the adrenaline is no longer helping him.
I'll say this. Minnesota has the bias. They're also the road team. Aaron Rodgers plays. Green Bay's got a good chance. Aaron Rodgers doesn't play. Take Minnesota all the way. It's too easy.
My rant is going to involve this team, so I'm going to hold that. But I just want to give kudos to the receivers for Green Bay for taking short passes, long distances, etc.
Yes.
We'll talk a little bit more about
that's what they get paid for.
That's what they get paid for. Texans, Titans. They were tied for net points, so the bias was 0.
That's interesting.
That always makes for an interesting game when it comes that close. The turnover bias went to Tennessee by 1 point, so that gives a bias plus 1 point to Tennessee. So Texans and Tennessee.
I think these two teams are still trying to kind of find themselves. You know what I mean? Houston's got Deshaun back, but I mean, after the first game, people might say, "Hey, that's not the same Deshaun we saw last year." Give him some time. Houston's defense was supposed to be pretty good. J.J. Watt, Clowney, and all that. But the Titans' defense is no slouch either. So I think you said the Titans are leading are the better team turnover-wise. So I'm not surprised about that. It's a pretty even game. The bias, obviously, is 1 point. So, again, take note in your mind, if you didn't know anything about net point power rankings and we said Houston's playing the Titans, would you or would you not think, wow, that's going to be a really close game? That's a tough one to call. The power rankings bear it out.
And interesting that last year Deshaun showed off against the Patriots. In the first game they played the Patriots again, and he didn't look as great. And the defense didn't exactly shut down Brady, but I think they, maybe moderated them a little bit. But you got your Titan defensive ends for the
Texans?
For the Texans. I mean, right. You got, Watt is back. Clowney's on the other end.
I think they fell victim to the Belichick magic. They got out-coached. He out-schemed them. I mean, he's no dummy. J.J. Watt and Clowney are real. They bring it. So they designed the game plan to take them out of the picture.
Coaching, eh?
Coaching on that.
Coaching. And we're going to do a segment at some point where we're going to look at the brain trust of each team and kind of really, maybe even rank them. I don't know.
Cool.
Do a net point ranking on brain trust. Problem is you got some different brain trusts this year than was last year, so you got that mix there. And haven't quite figured that out. In any event, next game, we have New Orleans and Cleveland. Cleveland has an 8-point bias, net point bias over New Orleans.
Isn't that crazy?
And a 7-point turnover bias against New Orleans, giving the bias plus to Cleveland 15 points.
Okay.
That's a weird number.
15 points isn't crazy big. I say New Orleans snaps out of it and wins the game. I'm not going to say they're going to crush them because this is the new and improved Browns, and I expect them to play pretty well. I just think New Orleans is going to have too much offense for them.
And that's the question. But we also kind of figured that with Pittsburgh too. You know?
That's true. But again, let's remember it's week one.
It's week one.
You know, it was raining in Pittsburgh. It's all kinds of stuff going on.
The strength, as far as I'm concerned, of Cleveland is their defense. That's where the even though I believe they have talent throughout the team, I believe that because athleticism is so important and it can overcome mistakes and things of that nature, even coaching, errors, more so than on offense. So that's going to be the question: are the Saints going to be able to put up those type of points, Saint-type points, or is
against this new and improved
Browns defense? That's my question. So, that'll be an interesting thing, especially you got Kamara, but you got, like I said, you got number one picks throughout that defense.
You good one.
That should be a good one. Miami versus the Jets. The Jets have a 24 net point bias in their favor. The turnover bias is at 0, so the Jets and the bias plus are at 24.
I have this one as an intriguing game. Number one, it's a division matchup. Number two, the Jets are at home. I don't know what Miami's going to look like. But Miami was a bit surprising last week. Their offense ran very efficiently.
Quarterback is back.
Their quarterback is back. Tannehill is back. Kenyon Drake, for the most part, was the lead runner, although old man Frank Gore from the U is still tugging it along.
I'm a fan here. I still love you, Frank.
I'm telling you, man.
On my Facebook page, literally, they have a memories part which comes up. And it's a memory from 4 years ago, whatever. And the memory actually came up when Frank was on his way out and Hyde was on his way in.
Yeah.
And I basically put out a post, saying, hey, man, best of luck, whatever. It looks like Hyde's the next man there. I felt that way when Hyde left.
And then the next year in a fantasy draft, I took Frank Gore, and the dude laughed at me. They were putting laugh out loud. They were typing on, and I was like, okay. I believe I won that year. But that's another story, too. I really want to watch this game because I want to see how real the Miami offense is, and I want to see how real the New York Jets defense is. They both were very impressive last week. Let's put them together in a division matchup. Let them bang it out.
That's going to be an interesting game here. Pittsburgh against the Chiefs. Chiefs are 10 net point bias in their favor. The Chiefs also have a 7 turnover bias in their favor, so that puts the Kansas City Chiefs with a bias plus of 17 points. And again, the challenge that Pittsburgh had, we talk about the offense, and we expected the offense to operate so much better against Cleveland.
Yeah,
but it was those turnovers.
Yeah,
those guys was.
I don't know.
They're coming. Cleveland's
coming, I don't know. For you. Pittsburgh might be in trouble. If there's some Steelers fans out there, keep your fingers crossed, because the Steelers might be in a little bit of trouble. And the trouble could come from their defense. Big Ben is Big Ben. He's not what he used to be. Yeah, he's kind of on his way out. But you got arguably the best receiver in the league. You got a great up-and-coming receiver. Everybody's crying over Lev Bell, and here comes Connor. Watch out for your defense. Don't fall asleep on them guys. You might have to make some moves. And this is a very dangerous game.
Here's a helpful hint for the Steelers defense. Watch out for the jet sweeps.
Oh yeah.
Coming from Kansas City.
And my man Deuces.
It's crazy. Kansas City looked crazy, but with the quarterback. Yeah.
He's a work in progress, but he's got a huge arm.
He's got a huge.
And he had a chance.
I'm sorry, his name escaped me.
Patrick Mahomes. He's got a huge arm, and he's had the luxury of hanging out with Andy Reid for an entire year without any pressure of winning any games. And he has the ultimate weapon in, I said Deuces, Tyreek Deuces Hill. Okay? As long as that guy's on the field, it's a problem for the other team.
Again, almost like in the Green Bay thing, a shout out to him, because this is a guy that takes a 10-yard pass, 80 yards or 70 yards, 50 yards, whatever, but all of a sudden he's out. It's just fun to watch.
It's crazy. It's very fun to watch.
It's very fun to watch. Okay, so that bias plus goes to Kansas City, Tampa Bay, and the Eagles.
I'm surprised you didn't pick this as an intriguing game, or did you? No, you didn't. I'm surprised.
Actually,
but go ahead.
Actually, I did.
You did? Okay.
Put a little dot. I did put a little dot beside it.
Okay.
And I haven't really been talking about the games that I thought were most intriguing. But let's go here. So, Super Bowl champion, Philadelphia Eagles, working with backup quarterback Nick Foles, who won the Super Bowl basically last year.
He was the winning quarterback.
He was the winning quarterback. Maybe not statistically in that particular game. I believe Tom Brady put up over 500 points. 500 yards.
That's true.
But he won the game because it's about points. It's not about yards. And that's what the net point power rankings is all about. But in any event, yes. So Tampa Bay had a pretty good game. They have a 2 net point bias in their favor, and a 3-point turnover bias in Tampa Bay's favor, which gives Tampa Bay a 5 bias plus points, 5 plus bias in their favor. So bias plus is 5 points in their favor of Tampa Bay. Get that correct. In any event, most people, I think the Eagles are pretty much going to come in there, and that Tampa Bay is not going to do what they did last week against this particular defense. Very close game, and that's one of the reasons I think it's intriguing, because a lot of people are also saying, okay, Fitzpatrick, right, played so well. If he plays well, and if he beats the Eagles, all of a sudden Jameis's job as a starter might be in jeopardy.
I don't know about that.
Well, that's what they're talking about. Because this offense looks like it's operating at a high efficiency level, and receivers who weren't getting off as much, especially what's his name, the former Eagle, Deshaun, right, is now all of a sudden getting those passes. So I think that there's some things playing out in Tampa Bay here that how they fare against the Eagles could have an impact on that. That's what I'm saying. And that's why I think it's intriguing. What about you?
I mean, it's only a 5-point bias, right?
So you know it's a close game.
Right. So it's going to be a close game.
I don't think Eagles fans think it's going to be close.
No, the Eagles think they're going to blow them out because it's Tampa Bay. But the thing about Fitzpatrick is he's been good everywhere he's gone. He's a journeyman quarterback, and he has been good everywhere he's gone. If the team itself was decent, he played well. Sure, you can pick out games here and there. You can do that with Nick Foles, too, so I'm not even going to go there, all right? But the man showed that he can put up points, he can throw the ball, and he has command of the offense, okay? Deshaun Jackson, yeah, he did well, but he did well at what he does, getting beat. The guy that I wasn't necessarily surprised about, but the guy that I'm glad that Fitzpatrick got worked into the game was Chris Godwin, receiver from Penn State a couple of years ago. Working him into this mix makes Mike Evans even more dynamic now, because they had that third option as opposed to just having Deshaun Jackson, who in my opinion is basically a one-trick pony. But that's another story. But that's the good thing about Tampa Bay. I'm not going to say this game is going to be a test. Yeah, I am going to say it. This game's going to be a test for the Eagles defense. Yes, it is.
Well, as I look at the numbers here, okay, in terms of points against, starting with defense,
right?
That was the question. Tampa Bay ranked 29th, okay, in terms of defense.
Right.
The Eagles ranked 4th, okay.
Right.
However, Tampa Bay ranked 1st in scoring.
Right.
The Eagles ranked 23rd.
Right.
So
still week one.
It's still week one. Yeah, it's still week one.
We're coming into week two.
The question that I have here, because you got a 23rd ranked offense against a 29th ranked defense.
Okay.
So I'm looking at
there's going to be a lot of questions, and they're all going to get answered.
They're going to get
week by week. They're going to all get answered.
All right. So we have the next game up. We have Indianapolis against the Redskins. The Colts against the Redskins. Redskins have a 29 net point bias and a 1 point turnover bias and a bias plus of 30 points in their favor. What's going on with the Colts?
The Colts aren't good, especially defensively. They're not good at all. And what I'd like to say about the Redskins is I'm very happy to see Alex Smith having success. I like Alex Smith. I liked him when he was with the 49ers. He's not flashy. He's not exciting. He just gets the job done. You can watch some of these other quarterbacks throw for 300, 350 yards and lose the game. Alex Smith will come out. He'll throw for 192, 205, throw 2, run 1 in, and get a win. Very efficient, and I expect that to continue for the Redskins. I think that 30-point bias will hold up just fine.
Yeah, they're efficient, I think, is a good word.
Efficiency is his middle name.
And then last year, he discovered his long ball. All of a sudden, he's throwing deeper, right? But he's always been a person that protected the ball and a lot of turnovers and all of that. And it seems to be really working well. The I guess part of the surprise here is the Washington Redskins ranked 2nd defensively, only gave up 6 points. So the team that they're playing is pretty much middling across the board, ranking 17th in points for and 27th in points against. So that makes sense all the way around. Cardinals, Rams. Well, this kicks off the slate of the 4 o'clock games, and that's a division game. The Cardinals are coming in with Sam Bradford still. He hasn't gotten hurt yet, right?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. So he's big, and Sam runs it okay. However, in terms of net points, they were minus 18. They were 31st in scoring. They only put up 6 points, and 21st on defense, giving up 24 points. And so I see the Rams with a net point bias of 38 points, a turnover bias in the Rams' favor of 4 points, putting that at 42 points, and the highest bias plus of the week coming up at 42 points.
So Arizona Cardinals upper management, take note. The Buffalo Bills are not going to keep farting around with Peterman at quarterback. They're going with their rookie. I suggest you do the same. That's all I got to say about that.
Right, mister. Shucks. All righty. My beloved Niners. Yes.
Jeez.
San Francisco is going to play the Lions and for
the Detroit Kittens.
And they have a 23 net point bias in their favor. They're tied relative to the turnover bias, so that 23 points is the bias plus as it stands. The question is, are the Lions as bad as they got beat? And I think that the Niners are coming into this game with a lot of questions. They had mistakes and injuries, which sort of sums up them coming out of the first game. You lose a Marquise Goodwin. You lose your first and your second string right guard. Coyle now has a concussion. And you're already working with, you brought in your running game looked pretty good. I mean, your runners look pretty good, but their line
got key pieces missing on the line.
Yeah, So if they so really this is kind of a referendum on two teams that really have some challenges.
Yeah.
And which team is going to respond to the challenges. So right now the Niners have the favor, but the Lions as bad as they look? That's the question. Sometimes you just get the shock.
I watched every down of that game. I don't know why. I do know why. I kept thinking for a while, I thought that Stafford was going to be able to bring them back. Their defense is really bad, man. They got beat really bad. It's not even a matter of the fact that they were getting scored on. It was how they were getting scored on, the positioning of the D-backs when guys were catching passes on them, poor tackling. I mean, no pressure on the passer. They looked horrible.
There's some questions about the Patriot way.
Yeah, I've been hearing that stuff.
Belling a little
See,
bit.
the problem with that is the players have to buy into it.
Yes,
and from what I'm hearing, a lot of the players, especially the veteran players, are not buying into it. You got to remember, you're going from night and day, or from day to night, or whatever way you say it, with head coaches here, because Jim Caldwell was like a favorite of the players. They liked him, his calm demeanor, the way he talked to them. You know what I mean? He treated the vets a certain way. He made sure the rookies did what they were supposed to do, but he kind of did it in a fatherly way. I don't think Matt Patricia's coming at him like that. I think he's coming at him like a Belichick. Everybody's the same. Everybody's treated the same. Everybody does the same things at the same time, all the time, blah, 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 blah. And they don't buy into it. It's going to show up on the field.
Culture, yeah. Corporate America on teams, culture is an important variant there. So that's why that was my intriguing game. You got two teams that need to figure themselves out here. Denver against the Raiders.
I like Denver. Do they have the bias? Oh yeah, they do.
26 points bias plus. They got 23 in the net points and 3 in the turnover. So they have a total of 26 points. And your boy Case Keenum won that game.
No, that's your boy. That's your boy.
The argument is I think the Vikings should have kept him. In any event,
I'm glad to see that he's doing well.
They replaced him by the same guy, as far as I was concerned. And you see the difference. Can you imagine? Like I said, if they had gotten somebody like AR now, if they got AR, Aaron Rodgers, then you could say all of that guaranteed money.
Who got him, the Vikings?
Yeah. But now that was as close to guaranteeing a Super Bowl as you could get. But the question is, with Cousins, did they really, for all of that guaranteed money, assure themselves a Super Bowl?
Available.
The only way
he was the best guy available
is if you win the Super Bowl, and that's going to be the question. Next.
I really like Denver, by the way.
Did you really?
Yeah, I did.
New England, Jacksonville.
Ooh. Does that say it's a tie?
New England has a bias of 2 points for net points. Jacksonville has a turnover bias of 2 points. That comes out to 0 and a bias plus.
A 0 bias plus. That's interesting. Okay, this will be a test for Brady and Belichick. The Jacksonville defense is not invincible. I'm a Giants fan, so I was kind of glad that my team got to play a really good defense right out of the gate, so I could see, what we've really got offensively.
Okay.
First time we actually had Eli, Odell, Saquon, Sterling, and Ingram all healthy on the field at the same time.
Saquon the Gift Barkley.
Saquon the Gift Barkley. All on the field at the same time in a real game that matters in this Pat Shurmur offense. And I think they acquitted themselves pretty well. But unfortunately, it's going to take a little while for this whole thing to gel. Again, the defense played well in spurts. Then they gave up stuff.
How much the Giants here?
Yeah, I shouldn't go on and on about the Giants because, it's –
well, you have a chance, but
that's
the next team that we're going to talk about. But before I say this, I will say this much. Jacksonville was susceptible to superstar running backs because Saquon
that's where I was
took
going.
Off on that. Really?
That's where I was going. I was saying they acquitted themselves well.
They should, well, and especially Saquon.
Right.
He took
considering
off,
the level of competition with the Jacksonville defense, they acquitted themselves well, which means that Jacksonville cannot take the Patriots for granted. I'm sure they'll get up for that game. They owe the Patriots from that playoff game. The Patriots kept them from going to the Super Bowl. They were close.
So close that if the ref had called that strip, what's his name from the Jacksonville, the linebacker from the Jacksonville. If he had to give him that strip like he should have, the whole game could have changed. So
funny how those kind of things always happen in Patriots games, especially Patriots playoff games.
Yeah,
tough. But anyway,
so you want to talk about your New York Giants?
No, I really don't. I was using them as an example to let you know that this game is going to be really, really tight because Brady has a way of being able to move the ball down the field, keep time of possession, and really give a defense a hard time, regardless of how good that defense is. And as we saw Belichick out-scheme his team, the team they played last week, he's coming with a new game plan this week. So it's not a given.
It's not a given. Well, you have a bias plus of 0 points. There's no given there.
There's no given there, right?
So, no given there.
So I agree with the bias, and the bias agrees with me.
There you go. New York Giants and Dallas.
Yeah, we can keep this one short. Who's got the bias on this? The Giants.
The bias plus of 2 points.
You got a regular bias of 1 point and a bias plus of 2.
Net point of 3.
All right,
and Dallas has a turnover bias in their favor of 1, which reduces the Giants down to a 2-point bias plus in their favor. That's tough. These are, again, two teams that are looking for themselves right now, looking to establish themselves. You got, the who's who of receivers for the Giants and the who's those guys as receivers.
I like that.
Dallas.
That's good.
You like that one?
That was good.
And so, but you got that run game, but now you got questions about the Dallas offensive line. And you got
we're not questioning the Giants line?
Yes, we are. We're going to question them too. However, you got two superstars. As far as I'm concerned, the Gift is already a superstar. So you got two superstar running backs here.
Right.
So you should have a great running back exhibition in this particular game because both teams need to lean on these running backs. As I said, we call Saquon the Gift because I believe it helps Eli, and no doubt that the running game in Dallas helps Dak. And if they can get those things both clicking, then even your generic receivers can be open, but Dak has to be better.
Okay. And all I'm going to say is the Giants' defense is better than the Cowboys' defense. Therefore, the Giants will win. I don't care what Zeke does. They can't win with Zeke alone.
No.
They can't win with
any
Zeke
one
alone.
factor alone in football.
It's not going to happen. The Giants' offense is far more well-rounded. That's
the Giants.
That's all I got to say about that.
The Giants ranked 27th in scoring and 13th in defense. Scoring, they put up 15. They gave up 20. Dallas is 30th in scoring with 8 points, but they were ranked 8th in defense. They only gave up 16 points. So don't sell Dallas's defense short. We'll have to see if they can contend with the superstars on the other side of the line of scrimmage. Okay, moving on. And I kind of like this game. This is going to be interesting. Seahawks against Chicago. Chicago has a 2 net point bias and a 1 point turnover bias. That's only 3 points. This game is where? Is this in Chicago?
This game is in Chicago.
Okay, so they got the home thing going for them also. I sometimes throw a little something in for home, but we didn't really talk about that. I'm gonna leave that out right now. Seahawks are my sleeper team. But now with Mac in Chicago with 1 game under his belt, the quarterback for the Seahawks,
Dangerous
is going to have to keep his eyes open.
Yeah, he's going to be challenged. This is a really tough game to call. Chicago was somewhat impressive last week. Seattle was somewhat pedestrian last week. But Chicago's at home. That gives them a little edge. And Max seems to be on a mission. Doesn't look good for Seattle, to tell you the truth. They need to get their running game going. They seem to have found a new tight end, although it remains to be seen if this guy's for real or not. But I'll talk about him later in another segment. I think Seattle's really got to come hard in this game or they're going to get embarrassed.
Embarrassed. Okay.
Yeah.
When you look at the underlying numbers here, again, Seattle ranking 19th in points scored with 21, 23rd on defense. I was a little surprised, again, defensively. And points for Chicago's at 16. They really came out and scared the hell out of the Packers, looking like they're about to do something. Again, on defense, 19. So, again, very close in Chicago, and the Seahawks are going to definitely have to, put their game faces on it and begin to execute at another level. But actually, in my mind, for some maybe because they're in my division and in my sleeper, I have some questions about this game, and I actually have this listed as an intriguing game of the week. So that concludes this particular portion where we looked at all of the matchups and talked about our intriguing games of the week. We're gonna we have 2 more segments. The next segment where we're going to talk about our particular interests. In Ben's case, that would be fantasy, and in my case, that would be Madden. But we're not going to talk much about Madden because basically what I'm trying to do in Madden is, I've been playing Madden for a long time, but I haven't really been playing online. So my goal, and I'm sharing, as a matter of fact, if you go to the Sterling Net Point Power Rankings, you might actually see some cutouts from some games. But long story short, I'm just trying to push my rankings up. So, for example, I was down around 1,900, and I pushed up to about 2,300. But there's probably 4 billion people, and I'm probably in the lowest 1% of all of those people. But the goal is to actually push it up, Sure. And so I didn't get a chance to play this week, so don't have a lot to report on that. But with the first week of fantasy and you being in like 800 fantasy leagues, what you got to say about fantasy?
I play a lot of fantasy. The reason I'm in so many leagues is, number one, because I'm hooked on this stuff. And number two, I like to do a lot of drafts starting whenever ESPN or CBS or Yahoo, whenever they turn it on and say that you can start. What it does is it helps me get a feel for how people are drafting, how people are leaning toward running backs first.
You're talking about general population. You say people.
I'm talking about general population because when it comes time for me to have drafts in my money leagues, it helps to have a feel for trends.
Trend analysis.
Trend
Go ahead,
analysis.
Mr. Best.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. But then in certain leagues that will remain nameless, you always have a guy or two that throws a wrench into the whole thing and picks Aaron Rodgers in the first round or something crazy like that most people just don't do. So, you know.
And let me just say, I'm not a fantasy guy, and to a non-fantasy guy, that sounds like the thing to do. You pick Aaron Rodgers, you get him on your team, and then you let everything else work its way out.
So if you take him in the first round and there's 12 guys playing in your league, and they all take a running back, who you going to have left? When it comes time to pick a running back. Zeke's gone, Levis gone, Gurley's gone, Kamara's gone, Saquon's gone. You got to go on, Hunt's gone.
Well, but really, who counts for the most fantasy points in terms of positions, quarterbacks or running backs?
Probably quarterbacks, but you only got one. Running backs, you have two. You can only start one quarterback. I'm not saying it's not important.
Well, that's an interesting point. So you're saying because you have two running backs, by getting your running backs in place, you actually can outpoint that position.
Right. And let me put it to you this way. The difference between the number one quarterback let's put it this way. The difference between a top 3 quarterback and a quarterback that's ranked between 15 and 20th really isn't that great. Weekly points production wise.
So you can get away with it lower.
Yes.
So I guess the guy who had Fitz.
Well, that's an anomaly. Number one, he's not normally a starter, you know. So that was an anomaly. But that's the great thing about fantasy. Do you go pick him up, Lee? Because you know Jameis is coming back.
Well, here's the question.
But besides that, because it's only week 1, and I don't want to make fun of anybody or anything, but I expect to do really well. Guys were picking off the waiver wire like crazy with players that they never.
Who's your receiver? Do you want to?
Dude, I can't even remember. I have so many teams.
So just one receiver that you can say, or one of your teams that you can say, well, this is a receiver that I kind of liked. Kind of like
that maybe other people didn't pay attention to.
Okay.
Emmanuel Sanders, Denver.
Okay. There's those fantasy tips.
I mean, if I say anybody else, if I say Mike Thomas or if I say Juju, people will go, oh, yeah, I knew that.
Right.
You know what I mean? A lot of people weren't looking at Emmanuel Sanders.
Really helped out quarterback in this last game, you know. And so, I can see that.
So now I'm not going to call this fantasy advice. I'm just going to say that if you weren't paying attention, you need to pay attention. These are our 4 players that I think surprised a lot of people. They surprised me. At quarterback, of course, Ryan Fitzpatrick for the Buccaneers. I don't know if you want to run out and grab him. I don't know if he has another great game or 2 left in him before Jameis comes back. But I'm pretty sure when Jameis comes back, he's going to go back to the bench. So that's something you might have to wrestle with. But when the guy comes out and throws, 28 passes and completes 21 of them, that's pretty doggone good. 417 yards. The standard for a good quarterback day is like 300 plus.
He's got 2 good receivers, though. I mean, you got Mike Evans on him. First of all, Mike
Evans is a great receiver. Deshaun Jackson is
still fast.
Decent receiver.
He's
a one-trick pony. He can only run long routes. I like
one-trick ponies that are really good at that one trick.
Dude, they're going to be very happy that they got Godwin. Very happy.
I'm sure.
Very happy.
Look, that's a third guy.
But he threw for 4 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Here's why you got to be careful before you run out and grab him. He ran 12 times.
He sure did. I
saw for 36 yards.
Yeah.
That's more like Jameis than it is Ryan. And he scored 1. And he took a pop, too. So, kudos to him.
He's playing lights out. I mean,
kudos to my man.
Why hold back? Because in 2 weeks, you might be sitting back on the bench.
That's right.
You know, and in 3 weeks, you might get a call.
Oh, they won't let him go.
Buffalo.
No, they'll never.
I think we could get Fitzpatrick.
I don't see. This is the problem when you're like Fitzpatrick, and this is kind of like if you remember way back. This is for old people. Steve DeBerg. You're too valuable as a backup to let go. and you're not good enough that another team is going to throw a bunch of riches at your team to get you.
Like Khalil Mack, right?
Right. Nobody's going to do that for Fitzpatrick. But he's extremely valuable for what he is because he can have games like this when you need him. At the running back position, and a lot of people are going to say, I knew. No, you didn't. Unless you watch college football and you saw this guy at Pitt, you didn't know nothing about him until you saw a little bit of him in the preseason. That's James Conner. Lev Bell, trust me, if somebody puts together a Khalil Mack package and sends it to the Steelers, adios, brother. You're going to another team. They love James Conner. I do not blame them. 31 carries for 135 yards. That's really good. I'm not going to say it's outstanding. That's a damn good fantasy game. 2 touchdowns, caught 5 passes for 57 yards. That's a great day. That's a good day.
That's a good day. And again, you know, I keep telling people don't sleep on the Cleveland Browns, especially their defense. And he did that on the Cleveland Browns defense with all those first rounders.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
At wide receiver, I guarantee nobody gave this guy afterthought because I checked the waiver wire. He was on there, and I'm in a bunch of leagues, and a bunch of people picked him up this morning before I left my house. Philip Dorsett, who used to be with the Colts and I don't know who else.
Yeah, you hear the name.
Yes. He got targeted 7 times. He's with the Patriots. He got targeted 7 times. He caught all 7 passes, only 66 yards, but he had a touchdown thrown in there. And you know, anytime a running back or receiver can score a touchdown, that can turn a mediocre yardage game into a good fantasy game.
Okay.
So that's a big deal. But he's working with Tom Brady. That makes him valuable. At least till Edelman comes back. Again, I pick him up. I use him. Edelman comes back. I can drop him. Or maybe he develops and becomes really good.
Well, they can use as many receivers as don't give them Brandon Cooks. You know, you're looking for people that can, you know, fill in.
And Dorsett is fast. He fills the Brooks role. He's not as fast as Brooks. Brooks. I'm saying Brooks. Cooks. He's not as fast as Cook, but he fills that role. Okay. The Patriots are a team that does what you always say. They get the players to fit what they need. They lose Cooks, they bring Dorsett. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They lose Deion Lewis, they draft Sony Michel. That's
one of the Sterling theorems is great system plus great talent equals championships.
Right. Last but not least, the tight end, Will Dissly. Yeah, don't diss Will Dissly. That was corny. The Seahawks let Jimmy Graham go, so they needed a tight end.
Yes, they did.
So they brought in a guy, I think his name is Vanette. He was supposed to be the guy to replace Graham, and then they grabbed another guy in the 4th or 5th round named Will Dissly, and he's supposed to be the blocking tight end. Well, the blocking tight end caught 3 passes for 105 damn yards and a score.
Who's blocking downfield?
Here's the thing. Is he for real? Or was this just one of them games?
With the Seahawks.
With the Seahawks. Your sleeper team. Keep an eye on him. Okay?
Okay, well, Dissly.
That's all I got.
Okay, Mr. Ben, with your fantasy suggestions and your wrap-up for people to keep an eye on. And you open my eyes to a few people, I would definitely have to do that. All right. So, Ben, we normally wrap up our sessions with a good old-fashioned rant. There's something out there that's pissing me off or pissing you off.
I can't wait to hear it.
Disturbing you, or just something that you got to just, you know, it just kind of gets on you. You hear this. So let me tell you about mine, right? Football is the ultimate team sport. Am I not correct?
As far as I'm concerned.
But also, am I not correct when we talk about the quarterback getting more blame when they lose and more credit when they win?
It's not just a saying, it's a reality.
It's such a reality. I mean, the Green Bay game, Aaron gets hurt, goes out. I mean, no, excuse me, gets hurt and goes out on a stretcher, right? So when he comes back, you know, it just you understand that it
was a Willis Reed moment.
It was a Willis Reed moment. Everybody's heart comes up all of a sudden. So you got to give him credit for that, and I'm not trying to take that away from him. But on the other end of those passes were guys who, I mean, you can't talk about some of those touchdowns without talking about what the receiver did. That was extraordinary. I mean, you got to give his receivers the credit, and you know, everybody's gushing over Aaron, et cetera, but what those receivers did on this, even, you know, some of those Hail Marys that he threw, and you think about the receiver that was underneath that thing in Seattle, he had the one guy, he kind of stayed ahead of everybody else, and then he backed up and put himself in perfect position, and everybody's fuming over Aaron Rodgers threw that pass, and I'm thinking, man, that guy in the end zone that caught that ball amongst, how many? He got 22 people out there.
There's a reason why they call it a Hail Mary.
Yeah.
Because when he lets it go, it's a prayer.
So it just kind of was like, I'm like, with listening to the media, and maybe this is a media issue, but I'm like, you got to balance this credit out a little bit more.
I hear you.
You know,
you're right.
These receivers are doing some amazing things after the catch. So that's kind of my rant. I do want to mention great day for fullbacks. I mean, you got fullbacks catching touchdowns.
We bring up the stuff you guys don't think about.
Great day for fullbacks. Trend that you're seeing across is the jet sweep. I mean, this is trending across the entire league. So interesting with the Ravens. We were talking about the Ravens to see how they're employing Lamar Jackson into this offense. He got on the field with all of his talks about, you know, I'm a quarterback, I'm a play quarterback. They had him out there, but they also had Flacco in the pistol. So we were talking about what are the Ravens doing, and then I forgot whose brother he is. Coach of, you know. Yeah. So, you know, he's got a lot of college influence. He saw what his brother did against him with Kaepernick all the way to the Super Bowl. Right. And obviously he's not afraid to try some of these, you know, pistols. And,
I think we talked about this a little while ago, and I think I may have mentioned when we were going over the whole, you know, Flacco was this kind of quarterback, and then you go and you drafted Lamar Jackson, who doesn't quite seem to be the same. I said the only way that you can kind of even that up is to become a little bit more imaginative on offense. It looks like that might be what they're doing. So,
and I'll wrap it up with this: Marcus Peters going into the end zone, turning over, jumping into the end zone backwards, and giving you a beast mode. Grab the jewels as he dives backwards into the end zone.
That was beautiful. And we may not get to see Beast Mode do it a whole lot more because he ain't breaking off them kind of runs. But that was never banned. But and people probably never even noticed this. But you have to kind of go back and watch an array of his touchdowns to actually catch what he's doing. And sometimes, I think if you watch Red Zone, they would cut it off. Excuse me for that. That wasn't pun intended.
We talking about the jewels. No one's talking about cutting anything off.
But so that because they noticed it, the NFL noticed it.
But he never got fined or anything.
I don't think so. No.
He got away with that stuff.
He got away with it.
And it's funny because they were they were talking to.
Talk about Tony.
I know.
Jesus.
I know. Yeah, you know what I mean. They were talking to what's his name? Who's the former receiver who Cinco?
Ocho Cinco.
Chad Johnson. They were saying he was saying, well, it was more fun when it was illegal. Now that it's legal and everybody can do it, kind of takes a little bit of the juice out of it. Yeah. But Beast Mode was definitely giving it to him when it was not exactly legal, and he got away with all of that stuff. It was hilarious. But when Marcus Peters went in Oakland and did that turn. And, wait a minute, aren't they cousins? I think they're related.
I think they are cousins.
Yeah,
they are. They're
related.
They are.
So that makes it even much more fun.
Thing.
You know what I mean? But yeah, that was hilarious. So, any last words? Any final comments? Questions, concerns?
I don't really have a rant per se. I was getting a little annoyed with the whole Jalen Ramsey, Odell Beckham thing, and I just want to say that I'm very happy to see that Odell didn't fall for that mess. And you know,
Odell's so grown up now, isn't
he? Yeah, that does kind of put me into a rant because all the talking heads, and I guess we're talking heads now too, but all the talking heads on television, not all of them, but a lot of them, especially the ones that I don't like. It's funny how that turns out. That fat jerk off, Jason Whitlock, goes into this whole thing when Odell got his money about now how he's going to tank on the field. Oh, he got his money now. He's not going to perform up to the state. I'm like, wait a minute, this guy did everything above and beyond, considering all the mistakes that he made, and he made plenty. Okay, came to OTAs, came to voluntary camp, came to training camp, worked hard. Nobody worked harder. Okay, he made it sound like the dude shucking and jiving to get the contract, and then going to be like, I got y'all. You know what I mean? Come on, man. This guy is a consummate professional. Yeah, he's young. Yeah, he made mistakes, but I think he's mature and he's growing up now, and I think he's going to have an outstanding season, just like he has in the previous years when he wasn't injured, and he's going to be OBJ that we expect him to be.
Boom. I'm gonna leave that there because I have some thoughts on Whitlock also, but I'm gonna.
I can't stand that dude, man.
Yeah, I had some questions. I think when he had some real questions with the whole show with LeBron and the barbershop, and he's like, "Oh, there's no barbershop I ever went to." This guy ain't had hair in I don't know how long, but
I can't stand that dude. Why would he even say that though?
You know what I mean?
Why would he even bring that up? You know where he got me? He said, "I'm not a big political guy. In fact, I don't even vote." I turned it off. I don't even want to hear nothing else you got to say. After all the mess I heard him say,
all that opinion.
And then he says that, I go, I'm not surprised.
Then your opinions add up to nothing.
Exactly.
It's all air. It's such an old term. In any event,
I think some other ones too.
In any event, we had a really lively show. I'm looking forward to the upcoming week. We had a number of intriguing games. The questions about the whole tackling scenario are still being worked out.
You seen any flags?
I think there were more flags for pass interference that I thought was weird. And then you had a few of the ones where the rusher falls on the quarterback and they get roughing the quarterback. And
they were kind of ticky-tack, if you ask me.
I thought that they were a little ticky-tack. One coach is actually talking about running drills to teach his linemen how to both tackle and then fall to the side so you don't fall on the quarterback. Because that's the rule. And now you have to conform to the rule or you get the flag. And I saw a few drives get really extended after what normally would be a great defensive pressure.
Right.
And then boom, the flag goes up. So I didn't put that in as a rant, but this whole tackling thing is a work in progress. And I do think that more so than even in previous years, it's going to have an impact on your net points for games. So keep an eye out for that. Any last words, Benny?
No, I'm done.
Ben and Barry on football. We can be found on social media. We can be found on Facebook. Let's see if I can pull this up real fast. Benny, there you go. Ben and Barry on football. And we can be found on Twitter at B&B on football. We don't yet have an Instagram page, but we'll work on that.
It's coming.
And if you go to www.benandbarryonfootball.com, you will reach our YouTube page where these videos will go up first. So that's an easy one for anyone. www.benandbarry, and it's not the and sign, it's A&D. No, it now goes to the YouTube page. I was able to fix that. Yeah, it goes to the YouTube page. I'm working, man.
I see.
Yeah. And we also have our Twitter page. And the one thing I would love to say about our Twitter page is that we don't have a lot of followers yet. As you can say, we only have 25. We've only been up for a while, but we're following 400 people. And if you come to our Twitter page and you check out who we're following,
Good content.
I think you're going to find a lot of great football content on our Twitter page, or at least be able to connect to some awesome information through all of the people that we're following. We're even following Patrick.
Follow him to hell.
This guy, Nate Burleson, you know, our
I like Nate.
Good Morning
Nate's kind of corny, but I like him.
Team. I like the Good Morning Football team. I think they do a fun job, and I definitely felt for them as we all entered the off season. Those guys were still trying to put out an entertaining show. So,
but those pre-show meetings were probably good, man. Like, what are we gonna talk about?
And then, last but not least, follow me on Facebook at the Sterling Net Point Power Rankings. And I'll be putting out more information with the rankings for the points for, points against, turnovers, and also my short blogging points, which we're going to call net points. So look for some information. If I see something that I think is pertinent relative to net points and football, I'll definitely put it up there. And we were so happy with the beginning of the 2018 NFL season and the Sterling Net Point Power Ranking. So that's all for me. That's all for you. Peace out. Everybody have a great week. See you next week.
Go Noles.
Go Noles.